Okay, small class today. We did talk about Social Security yesterday, all three parts. Did I talk to you about 2037? Yeah. And did I talk to you about 4 ways that they could change that? Okay.
Wait, I saw on something. It was on Instagram.
Oh yeah, I saw it too. We're supposed to run out
Yeah.
of money.
Yeah, the government's about to run out of
Oh
money.
yeah. So that we have what's called a debt ceiling. How do I spell that? Close enough?
Okay.
So i.e. Okay. So a debt ceiling means that, right now we're at 28 trillion plus, okay? And so the government, I guess last year, raised the debt ceiling to 28 trillion something, okay? So in order to print more money to go further into debt, Congress has to raise the debt ceiling, okay? And the big argument right now is those 2 bills in Congress, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill and the $3.5 trillion bill that has a bunch of crap in it, okay, which will raise the national debt. Now, Joe Biden is saying that it won't cost anything, that he's going to raise taxes on corporations from 21% to 28%, and he's going to raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans, and that will pay for the $4.7 trillion of both bills. Do you believe that? So there's a fight in Congress over these 2 bills, and the Republicans are saying, look, we're not going to pass these bills unless you compromise with us. And so unless you're willing to compromise with us, we're not going to increase the debt ceiling. Now, guys, this is called a government shutdown. It's happened at least 5 or 6 times since I've been alive. It happened in the 90s a couple of times, and it happened during the Obama years.
Oh, is that when they had no one take care of the national parks, and that's...
You could not go to the national parks because non-essential federal employees told not to come to work. Now, you know it's nice for them? It's a paid vacation. They will get paid, but they're told not to report to work. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Right? So, I remember in the 90s when this happened, because I went to college in Georgia, and I was going back for an alumni baseball game in Georgia. And about 10 miles from where I went to school is a city called Andersonville. Now, I don't remember how much you remember the Civil War that you studied last year. There was a Civil War prison called Andersonville. Does that ring a bell with anybody? Okay, the reason why they talk about it in history, it was a place where they had prisoners that were from the north. They had prisoners from the north and the south here in Georgia, and it was horrible. Like, the conditions of that prison were like ungodly. Okay, and my wife and I were going to go see Andersonville. There was a sign on the gate that said, "Sorry, we're shut down because of the government shutdown." Okay, now at the time, I supported the government shutdown because I wanted the government to balance the budget. So you had a Democratic president, Bill Clinton. You had Congress controlled by Republicans, and the Republicans told Bill Clinton, "We're not going to spend money. We're not going to spend all this money, and that we don't have." Okay, that actually ended up working out because in 1995, guys, and 1996, our government took in more money than it spent. There was a surplus. Can you believe that? Because last year, guys, the government spent over $2.5 trillion more than it took in. Okay? We can't just keep running up this debt. Have I showed you the debt clock? You've seen it. So that's what you saw on Instagram. Okay? Where are you people coming from? Oh, okay. You didn't just take the day off after that? Oh, well, that's sweet. Hey, listen, so we'll see what happens, okay? I think Pelosi's gonna cave on this. She's gonna compromise, okay? Because you know what, somebody's gonna get blamed. Biden's gonna get blamed for the government shutdown, or the Republicans are gonna get blamed for the government shutdown. You know what I mean? It's usually the Republicans that get the blame because the media all blames who? The Republican, okay? But in this case, everybody's been piling on Joe Biden in the last 2 months. And some of it is well-deserved piling on. The whole Afghanistan thing, these mask mandates, this sort of stuff, right? And so a lot, I mean, like his popularity is sinking like a rock. His poll numbers are down big time, okay? So I think the Democrats are thinking, you know what, this is gonna make us look bad, and that's what they're most worried about. So I don't know if we'll get a government shutdown. I think there's a chance. Okay. But listen, what you're going to find out if there is one, that your life will not be affected if the government is shut down. And that's like, oh, wow, the government shut down. There was no catastrophe. Nothing bad happened. Oh, okay. Oh, the people that didn't have to go to work, they're still getting paid. Oh, well, okay. I mean, it's a joke. Thanks for bringing that up. And good job watching some news, like learning about some stuff. Good. All right. So, what were we talking about before that? Social Security. All right, moving on. Okay. You ready? You know, I might as well just call this like economics and history, okay? All right, so, this was, I don't know if you recall last year, when you took history, they had all the monopolies and they broke them up, okay? Antitrust laws and stuff like that, okay? Well, Roosevelt's gonna do that again. He's gonna break up some of these big companies, gas companies and electric companies, big conglomerates, okay? And then this was one of the questions on your homework, if you did the homework, okay, about the Interstate Commerce Clause. And guys, the Interstate Commerce Clause has always been in the Constitution. It was written in the original document. It's just that it was never really used to the extent that they're going to use it, okay? So when you talk about interstate commerce business, let me give you an example. Let's say you're going to build a house in Kansas, right? You were at the concrete plate, Paulie. You were at the concrete place the other day.
I was.
Who was there? You were there. Okay. So, all the materials that go into making that concrete. How y'all know? I saw y'all on TV. Especially the singers. Are you singing? Is that gum? Finishing up the snack. Okay. We're talking about the Interstate Commerce Clause. This was one of the questions on your homework. Okay. You're going to build a house. The concrete. Okay. You get all the concrete, like the sand and they use like gravel or all that. You can find all that stuff in Kansas, right? And make it in Kansas. You wouldn't have to get any of those materials from out of state, would you? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. So for the concrete, what about the the big concrete truck? Yeah, Yeah, or just concrete trucks, the ones that have the big thing. What is the big thing called? The big thing. Okay, the spinning big thing, all right? Now, was that concrete truck made in Kansas? Concrete mixer? No, okay? So that came across state lines. So, since it came across state lines and it's being used for business purposes, commerce, guess what the government can do? It can regulate concrete trucks and how you use them in Kansas. Now, the rest of the house, you build the foundation with concrete, you need wood, right? You're going to put up a frame, wood frame. Where are we getting the wood? So where's the lumber place getting it? Usually we get a lot of our lumber from Canada. We don't have trees in Kansas. The ones we do have, we don't want to cut down and use for houses, right? So we import it across state lines. It's interstate. Okay, so the construction industry, the roofing industry, the concrete industry, all of these industries can now be regulated. So the government comes up with rules and regulations for those businesses to follow. You guys were talking about OSHA and Trade-A-Cap. Okay, that's part of this interstate commerce that gives them ability to do what they do with businesses. Okay, it had never been used like this. So this creates, ladies and gentlemen, for any of you that go on to become an entrepreneur, that start your own business, is the regulatory state. A regulation does not have to be passed like a law. It can be OSHA, or the President of the United States, Joe Biden, can say, I'm issuing a mandate through OSHA that anybody that has more than 100 employees will force their employees to get vaccinated or be tested for COVID weekly. That's a regulatory state where they control you. Do you understand? That's where they get most of their power, is right here in the Interstate Commerce Clause. Okay, now if your business is solely within Kansas and you don't use anything from outside of Kansas, which is really rare, then they would not have regulatory power over you. Okay, you could claim that these came across state lines. So we're going to regulate you. Okay. All right. So that's why I put it in the homework, guys, just because it's something that most Americans don't know, that this was rarely used, and now it is what controls almost everything. Okay. All right. Unions. Now, I don't know if you remember the NRA, the National Recovery Administration, was struck down by the Supreme Court. And that one had tried to help unions. So they come up with a new thing to help labor unions, okay? And this is called the National Labor Relations Act, creates the National Labor Relations Board. This is still around today, and it still plays an important role in America, okay? Speaking of America, thank you. Boeing, brought it up in here before, okay? Where is Boeing headquarters? Seattle, Washington. Any guys been to Seattle? I was there this summer. One of the things I quickly realized is that Seattle is freaking expensive. You go out to eat there, you'll notice it's expensive. You rent a place there, it's expensive. Okay? The cost of living in Seattle is high. Now, Boeing is headquartered there. Okay? Now, the reason I bring this up is because this board tries to stop unfair practice against unions by business. Boeing is headquartered here. Now, they build planes in Seattle, and so they need sheet metal workers. Sheet metal workers, you know what I'm talking about? Okay. Now, these workers have a union. that represent them, and that union bargains with Boeing for better pay and better benefits for those workers, yes? Okay. Now, Washington State is what's called a union shop. Okay? Now, this union shop means if you are a sheet metal worker, Seattle, and there is a union, you have to join the union. You do not have a choice because Washington State is a union shop. Stay with me. And now that you have to join the union, every month you have to pay union what? Dues. Those come out of your check. You don't have a choice. Okay? Boeing wanted to build a new plant in this little state over here, which is South Carolina. Okay? Now, in Asheville, South Carolina, is the cost of living cheaper than it is in Seattle? Oh, hell yeah. Especially if you go to rural South Carolina. If you go to the bigger cities, it's more expensive to live there. But if you build a airplane factory in a small city in South Carolina, can you pay your employees less and they can still make a good living? And Boeing can make a bigger profit. Okay? So Boeing wanted to build a plant here to make planes. The union, the sheet metal workers union, and the engineering union up here sued through the NLRB, saying that Boeing was trying to punish the unions in Seattle by building a plant here. Because in South Carolina, guys, this is a right to work state. Which means if there is a sheet metal union in South Carolina, do you have to join? No, you do not. You can join if you want to, but you don't have to join. You following me? So, the union goes to the NLRB and says, this is unfair. They're trying to stick it to us. Now, the NLRB, this is like 10 years ago, okay, has 3 people on it. The board has 3 people. These are political appointments. So 2 of the 3 were appointed by Democratic presidents. 1 was appointed by a Republican president. These 2 Democratic appointees said, that's right, Boeing should not be allowed to build a plant here because they're sticking it to the union. This is unfair practices against the union. The 1 Republican appointee resigned in protest. He said, this is ridiculous. Now, do you guys know who the biggest competitor Boeing has is internationally? They build aircraft. Who is the 2nd largest builder of aircraft in the world? No, it's a French company called Airbus. And then the 2nd largest competitor is Bombardier, which a lot of theirs is out of Brazil. Okay? So Boeing is competing with these other companies to make and sell planes and make a profit, yes? So if you could build a plant here and pay the employees, I don't know, 2/3 or half of what they're making here, Boeing can make a better profit and sell its planes for cheaper and sell more planes. And these people who live where the cost of living is a lot cheaper make less money, but they still make a good living. These are still good paying jobs. You follow me? Eventually, after about 3 years, the NLRB allowed Boeing to build that plant in South Carolina. You guys know what they build here in Huntsville, Alabama? They build cars in Huntsville, Alabama, instead of here. where they used to build it, which is where? Detroit. Now, Cooper, are you familiar much with the auto manufacturing industry, or just would they just show up on the lot?
Not really, to be honest.
Okay.
They do this.
So guys, we assemble cars now in states like Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, instead of Detroit. Detroit went bankrupt. Now, Michigan, Detroit was a union shop. Guys working on the line, people working on the line for Ford Motor and General Motor in Detroit back in the 90s were making $48 an hour. Is that skilled labor? Not really. Do you need a college degree? No, you don't. $48 an hour. Now, in 1991 or 92, 93, Bill Clinton signed this, the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. And what that said was that Ford and General Motors and Chrysler would not have to pay any tariffs on bringing cars back in if they started building cars down here. Where's down here? Mexico. Okay, so you started seeing Ford and General Motors factories pop up in Mexico. Now, is it cheaper to pay somebody in Mexico or South Carolina or Alabama? Mexico. Okay. So we started seeing a lot of these jobs go overseas or south of the border for labor costs. Okay. That's when Detroit went bankrupt. Now today, Michigan figured out these unions, and guys, I'm not trying to bash on unions here. They've done wonderful things for the American worker, but $48 an hour? How is Ford and General Motors going to compete with Kia and Hyundai and Toyota at $48 an hour? Boeing used to be here in Kansas, didn't it? They left. They built the factory in South Carolina. Now, the cost of living in Wichita is really low compared to Nashville. You understand? It's a great place to live. Now, the climate sucks. Did you notice how we're going to skip the 80s? This is the one day in the 80s. So we're going from the 90s to the 70s, and we're not looking back. And we'll go from the 70s to the 40s and not look back. This freaking state. No, seriously, I think we'll have like 3 or 4 days in the 80s. I'm a baseball guy, so I'm always paying attention to the weather, okay? Is it raining out there when you guys came in? Was it hot? It's the last day. Yesterday was the last day in the 90s. It's over. So if you're working on that tan, you're done. Okay. Now, so listen. Unions can be good, but they can be bad as well. So Boeing left. They spun off a new company called Spirit. Yes? And you guys have family work for Spirit? Okay, now listen, what they did, because they created this new company, they renegotiated the contract, Boeing did, with the employees, and they cut their pay. So everybody that was working, most people that were working for Boeing that stayed, now went to work for Spirit, and they renegotiated their contract with them, lowering their pay. Now, they didn't like gouge them, but they tried to be more competitive, okay? And so you had a choice. Stay on with Spirit and take the pay cut, or go find another job. Okay? So, do you remember this? Is that a question? Yeah. Their departure from Wichita coincided with the building of this. Okay? Now, Spirit still plays a really big role in the manufacturing of Boeing aircraft. A really big role. You know what your family members do there? Like, they build fuselages here, right? Like that part of the plane, the you know. Do you know? Do you know? Okay. My neighbor was an engineer with Spirit. He retired last year. So he was an aeronautical guy. But anyhow, so there's two types of unions. What we're talking about here, like sheet metal workers, engineering unions, those are private sector unions. Remember public sector unions? What did I say public meant? Government unions, okay? So government unions in states like Washington State, California, Oregon, okay? These are all union shops. If you look at a political map, the blue states tend to be union shops. The red states tend to be right to work states. You guys know the difference between blue states and red states? You know what I'm talking about there? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Blue states tend to be states that vote for Democrats. Red states for Republicans. So look at this map. See the red and the blue? Okay, so most of those red ones are right to work states where you don't have to join a union. Most of the blue ones are union shops where you have to join a union. Okay, not exactly. I'll have a slide when we get to 1947 on it. Okay, all right. So, public sector unions. So, say you're a teacher in Washington State. Okay, and there's a teachers union. You're a public employee. You're a government employee. You have to join the union. You're in a union shop. You used to, yes. In 2017, there was a Supreme Court case that said if you are a public sector union employee, you work for the government, no longer do you have to join a union in any state. Can you? Yes. Do you have to? No. Okay, yeah. If you go on strike, so the union dues that you pay in, you go on strike, the union will save some of that money and help feed your family while you're on strike. The benefits also include them working for better pay, better benefits, like if you're public, so USD 259, the school district that many of us live in, or 266, they negotiate with the union for the teachers' contracts. So when the union says the 259 Wichita teachers need a raise, we want a 6% raise. They're negotiating with the union. The government is, the local government. And they're either going to say, okay, you deserve that, or they're going to say, no, 3%. And they're going to say, no, we're going on strike. Okay? Or they work out a deal. Okay? So that's the benefit of a union. Myself, Mr. Swords, Mrs. Lovelace, we don't have that. So what I learned pretty early on, it's my 24th year. Early on is that when teachers go down to, and who do you talk to about money at this institution? Who controls the purse? Tish controls the purse, okay? You go to Tish and say, Tish, I want more money. She's going to go find another job. And if you're a jerk about it, just say, well, yeah, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and leave. We have no union representation, okay? We don't have collective bargaining like all the teachers bargaining for better salary, okay? Now, listen, you guys know, we talk about it all the time, stewardship, right? Okay? Now, if I wanted to make more money, I could. One of my best friends teaches over at Northwest High School, used to teach right next door to me. Mr. O'Connor, Tom O'Connor. You guys know the O'Connors? Good Irish clan. Okay. Now, I get it. I get it. I'm in a position where I don't have to do that. And a lot of our teachers are. Like, they're married to a spouse that maybe does better or something like that, or, they don't spend a lot of money. They don't live lavishly. But it's hard to make a living. I mean, if you're the sole provider for a family, being a teacher here, I couldn't do it. I mean, I would go find another job. Now, my dad gave me 2 pieces of advice that I remember. He's passed on. But he said, Charlie, don't join the Marines. He was a Marine. Okay, so he's just like, you're not going to like it if you join the Marines. Don't join the Marines. Okay. And he said, don't work for the government because you're going to be frustrated. And so when I decided to become a teacher, I was fortunate enough to get a job here, and I didn't go to work for the government, nor will I ever try to go to work for the government. Okay, so I'm happy where I'm at. Okay, but I'm fortunate. I have a wife that makes good money, so I can do this job and not have to worry about it. Okay, but yeah, so you can see why, now guys, teachers are public servants. Cops are public servants. Firefighters are public servants. Soldiers are public servants. Servants don't make as much money. It's in the name. You follow me? So if you want to make good money, don't become a public servant unless you want to go to Congress. You make $174,000 a year. Okay? But if you go work at the state legislature in Topeka, you'll make less than I do. The state legislature is a part-time job. Okay? So public service, guys, is not supposed to get rich. And when I hear public school teachers bitch about money, I don't really have much sympathy for them unless they're living in a state like Oklahoma, where they really do not pay their teachers. It's like one of the lowest paid, salaries across the 50 states. Now, if you want to make money as a teacher, move to Alaska because they pay their teachers. Okay? Can you imagine being a teacher in Beverly Hills, California? You know how much it costs to live there? You can't even afford an apartment in Beverly Hills. You got to commute. You're a teacher, okay? Or have, a spouse that makes a lot of money. So, yeah, I don't, Kansas teachers, 259 teachers, they're doing fine. That's my opinion, of course. Okay. Now, all right. So, you want to make more money? A better job. Okay. Or, as this political cartoon says, this guy says, hey, if you want to make more money, upgrade your skills. Like, I'm getting a master's degree. I'm going to be done by the end of the year. Okay? Does that guarantee I'm going to get paid more here? Maybe. Maybe I'll get a bump. Okay. But this guy says, well, I'm taking a computer class. I could take another class, another course. And this guy says, here's one that should help. Introduction to Union Organizing. That'll get you better paid. Okay. So now, I'm not anti-union. I just think we have to be careful about running into situations like you had in Michigan, paying people $48 an hour, and then you have benefits on top of that. It's hard for these companies to make a profit. Okay. So you just kind of got to be careful here. Okay. All right. I went into a bunch of crap on that. I'm sorry, but it's practical, yes, relevant to maybe your lives. Lighten things up a little bit. All right. Okay, so Supreme Court, we talked about this, right? Switching time saves 9. We got striking down all this stuff. So what Roosevelt does is creative, okay? And so to get around, we were paying farmers not to plant, remember? So to get around this, he says, okay, we're going to pass Soil Conservation Adjustment Act, restrict production of crops in the name of conserving the soil. You guys remember during the Dust Bowl, right? I mean, we did all this farming and just planted the same thing over and over again, and the soil lost its nutrients and its minerals and it started blowing away. Then we got smart about it. We started planting trees, rows of trees, right? To try and block the wind, okay? And then we started rotating our crops. And not just like, what do they call it? Like strip mining or strip farming. I don't know what the term is. And then the government started paying farmers to plant certain crops that would conserve the soil, replenish the nutrients in the soil. Okay? Does anybody know what kind of crops you can plant to do that? You guys heard of this?
Corn, milo, and wheat. All, if you do it in alternate years, it'll fertilize the ground. Then milo fertilizes with wheat, and wheat fertilizes with corn.
Okay. But all, especially wheat and corn, do draw a lot of nutrients out of the soil. Okay? So you want to plant this in between as well. What else do we grow a lot in Kansas of? Soybeans. Okay? Soybeans are really good for the soil. And also, things that you grow underground in the soil, like potatoes, peanuts, also are good for the soil. Okay? And so, like soybeans, right? Okay, we grow a lot of those. What do we use that for? What do we use soybeans for? We have soybean oil, right? Heck, I don't think they served them today, but earlier this week at lunch, did any of you guys get a cheeseburger or a hamburger? Have you looked at the meat between those two pieces of bread at the burgers that they serve in the cafeteria? You've never looked at it. You're in denial. Because you guys have cooked like burgers at home, right? Do your burgers at home look anything like what they serve here? So I went to Ely a few years ago. I'm like, Ely, what is this? He goes, that's 100% beef. And I'm like, no, it's not. I cook beef all the time. It doesn't look like that. You know, they mix soybeans into that, okay? And soybeans are good for you. Probably better for you than 100% beef, okay? All right, we'll pick up from there. Short time today. Hey, guys. Yeah, we'll talk.